All right, this y'all haven't talked Marquette and St. Thomas, have you?
No.
I wanted to hit on that game a little bit and also talk about exam breaks as a whole because we're getting some crazy results this week, like Northwestern Chicago State, like Hofstra hanging with Duke for a half. I just want to talk about exam like this weird stretch of finals week. Like, what do you make of it? If you were a coach, what would your strategy be to approaching this week where your guys are in finals, you're not practicing as much, and you get a lot of sloppy basketball?
To me, I would get all old guys who have basically graduated and don't have finals or have online finals that are 30 minutes. Then you ain't got to worry about that. I think it's tough when you have other guys, but it's just a part of it. I don't know. For me, speaking personally, like when it was finals week, I enjoyed practice. I enjoyed games because I was sick of studying. Like I really look forward to it. I really enjoyed it. It was a great just like hour or whatever to just get away from that final stuff. So I don't really relate to the why is it so hard to play during finals week to me. It obviously it strikes some teams that's really taking a toll on some teams, but me personally, I don't understand it.
My read on finals week is this, and I spoke about it with the betting stuff that I do on a daily basis. And by the way, first winning like sweep day in like a month and
Hey,
a half. But it was entirely like I went 3-0 yesterday entirely because I finally got the right read on finals week. I just bet on all the huge underdogs. My read on this is if you are in a game like Marquette against St. Thomas, if you're the better team, you are not preparing for this game whatsoever. You're preparing for finals. You're like half-assing this. You're like, oh, we're Marquette. We're going to coast. It's fine. Make sure you take care of your grades. Everybody get to the holiday. If you're St. Thomas, you're like, yeah, we got to prep for this, but also like we're pumped for this game. We get a chance to catch Marquette when they're asleep, when they're not ready. And I think that translates to a lot of these games. Like Wisconsin was another example of one last night. It ended up being a 15-point win, but that was like a tie game early in the second half. We saw it the night before, right? There were two games. I'm forgetting who the teams were, but it like teams were on the ropes that just shouldn't have been. To me, if I'm a coach, what I would try and do is like this is seasons ahead. I would try and schedule a big game. If I'm a coach of a big program this week, like I think what UConn and Gonzaga are doing is the right approach because there's no way you don't show up to
Mm-hmm.
that game, even if it's finals week.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say would be my approach. Like all those games we just mentioned for tonight and tomorrow, that's the way to go. Because like even if you lose that game, it's not gonna hurt you in the long run. Really, it's not gonna be a scar on your resume. Um, what I don't understand, like going back to this Marquette St. Thomas game, is you're like, how do you not look at what just happened to Northwestern, where they lost at home to Chicago State when they're ranked? And I don't really think Northwestern should be ranked. We've seen what happens when you rank Northwestern at this point in the season. It happens like every other year. Uh, with respect to Budarius and Chase Audige last year, but like, why as a, is it? Am I oversimplifying it to say like as a coach, as a player, you just have to look at what else happened this week to be like, oh yeah, we can't take these guys lightly. Because I mean, uh, Marquette had a 2 point lead with a minute left. Like they got a very favorable foul call on St. Thomas, I think, that led to Tyler Kolek being able to pull like ice the game at the line essentially.
right.
The fact that and I know St. Thomas can score like all Summit League teams can, but they've been a D1 program for like 3 years.
So
Yeah,
so so the moral of the story is schedule tough games during finals week.
Yes.
I do
Like
think the St. Thomas one's a little interesting though, because like St. Thomas, I think is actually a decent basketball team. They're not great by any means, but like they have a winning record this season. They haven't played entirely nobodies. The profile of this team coming into this game is they play super slow, they limit possessions, but they make their threes and they shoot a ton of threes. Like that just is a way to win a basketball game that maps well to being the underdog, right? Because if you played 20 less possessions than normal and this team's just hot from three, all of a sudden they're in a game late. But I watched the Northwestern game. I watched this Marquette game. I think Marquette actually played okay last night. Like they weren't great by any means, but the story of that game was much more like St. Thomas was up for the challenge, whereas Northwestern was just like nobody showed up except Boo Booey, and they got bit by it.
Mhm.
Brutal.